If I may,
module 4.
just quickly jumping into that last slide of the hamstring tendinopathy, what I tend to see quite often with the runners that have that hamstring injury or have those hamstring problems is that they're not always necessarily overstriding, but they might just have that like hip flexing position while they're running. So they're actually not extending out through their hips. So they might not necessarily like really overstride, but they just don't extend in their hips.
Yeah.
Which I think can be, it pretty much gives you the same biomechanics and same principle. But I would rather like not put that just on their overstriding, but really just the position that they put their hips in.
I think he's just saying that it's a mechanism that leads to it, but that is definitely the most common thing. And why do you think that's the case? What do we do all day? We sit, you know. So we have altered mechanics just because of that. So it's something super common that you must target. You can butt in your Jeff, but that's what I think you're saying. This may be a mechanism, but I think the most common thing, like Anik said, is actually, you know, your actual mechanics. Would you agree there, mate?
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I suppose, you know, it is predominantly that hip flexion angle and stretching of the tendon, but yeah, it's just a possible way of achieving that with the overstriding. So we're going to some treatment strategies. So talking about a couple of different types of loads, we talk peak load. So how I guess how much load is going through each step. So that you know, we're taking lots of force through our body with each step. You know, well over our body weight. So and different parts of our body is taking that load. So I'll get into that in a sec. We also have our energy storage and release. So we want to be nice and springy with each step. So we're talking about sort of plyometrics here, and then going into the cumulative loading. So really gradually loading up how long our athlete is running. But the key point is to, you know, this is sort of one size fit all model. It's understanding what the patient loads demand. So yeah, starting with heavy, slow resistance training to we're talking about the peak loads. So making sure that our runner is nice and strong to be able to handle each foot strike, all the load that goes through the foot strike. Then we want to make our athlete nice and springy, being able to accept and then transfer load as efficient as possible, and then a graded return to whatever their activity demands, however long that they need to run. So why are we talking about heavy, slow, resistant training? Why do we go heavy? This is what I was just talking about before. Looking at our calf muscles, our gastroc takes 2.5 to 3 times our body weight. It takes 6.5 to 8 times body weight through each step. So it's really important that we get our calf complex as strong as possible, and that is lifting, doing calf raises that are exceeding our body weight. Our glute muscles over here actually don't take, in comparison, too much force. So, you know, we really want our athlete to be extremely strong in the calves. Quadriceps is taking quite a lot, 4 to 6 times our body weight too. So I thought that was pretty interesting. So a couple of different tools of study over here. So these are looking at calf raises, and these sort of groups of studies are looking at those that are doing calf raises above 70% of our max voluntary contraction. And you can see here that a big effect size of 0.9 in favour of doing heavy sort of calf raises. These studies are looking at less than 70%. So looking at, reps of 12 to 15 as opposed to, 4, 6, 8 over here. So reps of, 12, 15 plus of like a low load. The effect size is very, very small. So 0.04, basically no effect. And looking at a 9-month running program, so that's quite a long period of time. There was Hansen showed that there was minimal change in Achilles tendon stiffness. So heavy slow was considerably better than high rep calf training and running on its own. Also found this interesting, the effect of hip strengthening on running mechanics. So after a 6-week program of hip strengthening, this is the he was the PhD, and he showed that 6 weeks of hip strengthening did pretty much nothing to someone's biomechanics while they're running. It was interesting. So it's quite tough to change someone's biomechanics, but that alone is not going to be biomechanics alone is not a if you're not going to if you don't have a training load error, you're not going to have an injury because of poor biomechanics. So if you can get your tissue quality, tissue strength high enough, that's going to exceed your applied load. Biomechanics shouldn't worry too much. So the key point, as I was saying, little no evidence that strengthening changes movement patterns in individuals. So making strength exercise about coordination takes a goal, and that is to increase load. So the recommendation is to load up. It's if a runner has a weak muscle, it's not so much target strengthening that muscle up, it's strengthening the whole complex up. So the goal is it's not just targeting the muscle, it's so the calf muscle, it's strengthening up the Achilles tendon, the tendon, the bone that the tendon attaches to, it's strengthening up the whole complex.
So before we move on, sorry, any top takeaways? I just wanted to say who in the past has just smashed glutes with runners with no specificity. All right, come on. Who I want to pick on? Hey, Meekland, unmute yourself for a sec. What are your thoughts around? Yeah, that's a good answer.
I really don't know. I don't have a lot of experience with it, so I'm just taking it in and just interesting to hear about this because I didn't know a lot about this.
Yeah.
I don't have too much to add, unfortunately.
That's all right. I do want to ask Anik though, because I know she's treated a lot of us. So Anik, can you just tell us your points just around? Because I can be honest. Like when I started my career, I was all about glutes, and looking at this, and I have changed, of course. I did not consider load means. What your thoughts are around that? And
I guess I've been
what you saw on those slides.
I've definitely really at the start of my career been really focusing on some isolation stuff, which I've been stepping off of for quite a while now, where we really try to look into like the whole chain of movement. So those glutes can be a part of that. So we still might do some glute strengthening work, and that still might even be some isolation work, but it's not just glutes. So we'll be working on incorporating that in that whole movement chain. So we'll get them to do step downs where we're making sure that they're really nice and controlled. So we're looking at that whole biomechanical stuff, but we might want to, address some glute strength if we feel like there's a lack of strength there. If there's a big difference between
Absolutely.
left and right, for example, it might still be something that you want to address. So it's not something that you should really like fully throw out the window. And then on top of that, I think it's really important to see if people can actually incorporate their whole posterior chain. So just simply looking at if they can properly use their hamstring glute back muscle complex. Because what we see often again, and that's when people being in that like hip flex position for a big part of their day, is that they'll stay in that pelvic tilt where they can't actually really activate their glutes. And if they do that while running, for example, or doing any other sports, that might then, you know, impair that whole biomechanical chain. So I wouldn't just smash out glutes and that be the only thing you do, but I generally do make it a part of my rehab, unless I feel like somebody's really strong there and doesn't need it.
Absolutely. And I think your point is don't throw, one of my phrases, an Australian phrase, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. You've probably heard me say it before. To all the other internationals out there probably think I'm talking rubbish. All it means is that there's still a place for isolation stuff, but don't spend too long there. Think about mapping that pathway. You're not going to go straight from isolation to running, but there is a place there. And as Anik said, addressing maybe a weakness or dysfunction in that kinetic chain can really help with that. Anyone else have anything else to say before we move on to our final module?
Yeah,
Dave?
I would like to add that, yeah, I agree with that, with Anik as well. I have experience as well with the glutes exercise. I do what I did see in the photo of the two runners, although it's different stride phases. It's like the opposite, but you do see that, like, if you just take the right one, you do see a bit more controlled. And I think that's what also, if you work with the patient, even if it's on exercise strengthening the glutes, I think he will achieve some. It's not only the biomechanics; he will achieve also muscular control, neuromuscular control, that will improve probably also how he runs. Maybe not biomechanically, but just muscular control that will maybe can help with lowering pain level and
I think it's a
control.
very good point, Dave. And this is an isolated study talking about, you know, one factor. There's so many other factors which go into running that might be intangible, that aren't measured. So it's definitely something to keep in mind for sure. All right, Jack, keep going, mate. Let's go to the last. This is the last module, I think it is.
Yeah.